I looked toward the building. The shooter was still gone, so I ran to the guy at the neighboring table. "You have a cell?" His eyes were wide and pupils full. He didn't respond to my question, so I smacked him. Not hard, but not soft either. Finally he nodded. "Call 911 now. Get an ambulance here." I waited until he pulled out his cell and dialed. Then I hopped the waist-high patio wall and took off my flip-flops. I sprinted across the grass. At 150 yards away, the side of the building came into view, and so did the shooter. It was a man, I could tell by the broad shoulders and choice of clothing. He raced down the side of the building on a fire ladder, which ran down the building's side. The ladder had metal rungs embedded into the brick and a cylindrical cage wrapped around the rungs to protect from a fall. The shooter's hands moved fast down the rungs. His feet weren't moving in unison, though. They slipped over the rungs, barely touching each one in a controlled freefall. It was a good technique. When I was 100 yards away, the shooter made me. He kicked his feet toward the wall and jerked to a stop, then pulled out a handgun and pointed it at me through the rungs. I zagged to the right, then zigged back left. The shooter knew it would be a tough shot with a handgun, so he stuffed the gun back and continued his free fall. When he reached the bottom of the ladder, he hang-dropped to the ground and sprinted into an alley between the buildings. I maintained my charge, but was losing ground, so I slowed and pulled out the SIG. When I reached the alley, my finger clicked the safety off. I stopped running and quickly surveyed the area. The alley was filled with huge industrial-sized garbage bins, giant boilers, pumps, and other large mechanical structures. No students wandered the area. Not a soul around. I took a few breaths to steady my arm. The shooter was about 75 yards away, a mile for a handgun. He was angling toward a thicket of bushes at the end of the alley. I took up the trigger slack and steadied my arm as best I could with a heaving chest. Then I dropped the hammer. At the last second, the shooter angled behind a boiler. My round hissed into the metal cylinder. Water jetted out and steam squealed through the hole. I sprinted after the shooter, but soon watched him slip through the dense thicket of bushes. When I reached the foliage, I brought my forearms up and crashed through the tangle of branches and twigs. By the time I bashed through and burst onto a maintenance road on the other side of the bushes, I was just in time to see a sedan race away. A black Monte Carlo, identical to the one I chased after this morning. The intruder's car. I charged down the road and popped 3 shots. One sprayed wide. Another smashed out the rear window. The final bullet lodged into the back bumper. Nothing, however, stopped the car's forward momentum. It roared off. I watched the Monte Carlo squeal a hard left and disappear around the corner. It felt like my future was racing away from me, just like the car was. I bent at the waist and sucked in some air for close to a minute. It was all I could do at that moment. After that, I put my hands on my knees and squeezed my kneecaps. I couldn't believe Stanley was shot right in front of me and that I dove away from him. This couldn't get worse. I lay down with my back against the pavement, not caring if anyone was around and watching me. As I lay there and caught my breath, I thought about the kid. He'd survived the gunshot, which was the only silver lining. Life with my son was over, however, and my career wouldn't survive. I'd lose my job and my paycheck, and a judge wouldn't give weekend visits back to a deadbeat dad with no source of income, a man who harbors weapons, lies to the police, and can't protect someone else's kid. Not just someone else's kid, mind you, the governor's son, for crying out loud. I bashed the pavement with my fists, then put my hands over my face and stayed like that for about 3 minutes. After some wallowing, I resolved to figure out the mess. If I was going to have no family and no job, I wanted to at least know why.